international agreement that we can't simply replace our retiring coal and oil plants with natural gas if we expect to have anything like a livable planet by 2050. You've got the National Center for Atmospheric Research saying that substitution of gas for coal as an energy resource results in increased rather than decreased global warming for many decades. You have the International Energy Agency, which shows that if the golden age of gas scenario that many people are relying on when they're thinking about replacing coal with gas would result in 650 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. So it's simply not possible to replace all of the coal and oil units that are retiring with natural gas and expect to have a livable climate and a livable planet. So what's their solution to things going offline? Let's build the big pipeline right now, and we'll figure out later how to deal with the impacts from that pipeline. And essentially that's what we saw. We saw the New England governors, all 6 of them, come together and panic and say, if we're going to deal with higher energy prices in the winter, then the best thing for us to do is force all the ratepayers to build this new pipeline, and then prices will go down and everybody will be happy. And we'll figure out the climate impacts later. There were a lot of myths and misperceptions that were driving the decision that the New England governors made. First of all, they thought that the pipes were completely full. And you'll hear Kinder Morgan say on occasion that their pipe was completely full. But the reality is that while they are subscribed, while people have contracted for what's known as firm capacity on those pipelines, they have not been full. We know from the Black and Beach study that was commissioned by the New England governors that the price spikes started to occur, I'm going to skip ahead one here, started to occur at about 75% of full capacity. And we know that in the winter of 2012 and 2013, there were only 10 to 26 days where we actually experienced price hikes. Even in this past winter, the winter of 2013 and 2014, which is one of the ones that brought about the increases that we've seen in recent electric prices, there were only 10 days when the pipeline system was being utilized at over 90%. Or sorry, at over 90%. 95%. There were 42 days when it was being utilized at over 90%. But that means there was still 10% of capacity in the pipelines that we already have coming into New England that was available to be used. The reason that it didn't get used is because right now the gas markets start at a different time of day than the electric markets. And so when someone who's thinking about firing up their gas-fired generator and selling their power into the market is trying to make their decision about whether to bid on spot market natural gas or whether to bid on other types of supply, they don't have the information they need in order to make a smart bid. We've got these, what are known as needle peaks, when essentially in the very beginning of the morning and at the very end of the day, when people are turning on both their heat and their lights, that's when we're seeing the peak demand on our system. And when we would have normally dealt with that by bringing in more LNG in concert with some of the pipeline gas that we have, or we would have simply been using other types of generation. Instead, what the New England governors thought would be the best way to handle this would be to overbuild pipeline capacity so that you'd have gas for those few days of the year when you were dealing with a peak, and guess what else would happen? It would suppress the price that the power generators were paying for natural gas. And that then becomes a mechanism that results in natural gas generation looking like it's the cheapest type of power generation to build, giving it a competitive advantage over other types of generation like wind, like solar, and like demand resources. So these are some of the perceptions that were out there. But we looked very closely at the Black and Beach study, and there have been more studies that have been done. Actually, ICF, which is a very well-known consultant, has done some studies for an LNG importer, GDF Suez, who came up with that data about the pipelines only being used at 90% capacity 42 days a year and only 95% capacity 10 days a year. So we know that there's good information out there that shows us that we don't actually need more natural gas. And the Black and Beach study itself said that. It said, consumer consequences of New England's increasing dependence on natural gas as an electric fuel source are difficult to quantify precisely and predict accurately. And that was one of the things that the internal memos from NESCO were saying at the time, that they were still pushing ahead with this idea of a tariff. The Black and Beach study, and if you go online, they've still got phase 3 of the study up on the website. On page 9, it clearly said, if we could use the low demand scenario where we've got energy efficiency, other demand side management, distributed resources, more of an increase in the renewable portfolio standard, no new infrastructure solutions are needed or justified. And so that was the information that the New England governors had when they were still pushing for this tariff that would have forced all of us to pay for a pipeline that most people didn't want in the first place. The other important point to note about Black and Beach is that what they projected was that there would be a severe drop in the price spikes starting in 2016. You can see on this chart. So they actually guessed that investing ratepayer money into a pipeline project would result in economic losses for the first 6 years of that project. And yet, there were people in power and people who were making the decisions who thought that that was a worthwhile bet to take. So where are we now? Well, this winter, October 2014, according to ISO New England, just 2 weeks ago at the participants committee meeting, the COO of ISO New England pointed out that October 2014 natural gas prices are 28.5% lower than they were in October 2013. October 2014 natural gas prices are 16.8% lower than they were in September of 2014. And the average locational marginal prices of our energy on the system is 15.2% lower than it was in September. What we have here is a set of people who are still trying to rely on the crisis that existed last winter and the winter before to justify a pipeline that really isn't needed. So what else happened? Massachusetts, in large part because of your work and the loud voices that you brought to the table, decided that they would investigate the low demand analysis that the Black and Beach study indicated was necessary. ISO New England's winter reliability program will include liquefied natural gas this year. ISO New England actually said in a filing to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission 2 winters ago that they wanted power generators to stockpile oil to deal with the winter peaks, in part because they knew it would be more expensive and they didn't want to send the wrong price signals to the market about the need for more natural gas. So we protested, as did a lot of other folks, including the New England Power Generators Association, and this year the winter reliability solution will include liquefied natural gas. The North American Energy Standards Board, which I'm a board member of, has proposed 3 additional nomination periods for natural gas. So what that means is, instead of only having one time during the day when power generators can go to the market and try to find out how much it would cost to get more gas, they'll have 3 new times when they can go to the market. And the way that markets work is that the more liquidity, the more transparency you have, the more options you have to bid, the lower the prices are. So the comments for that are due at FERC on November the 27th, and we're working on those comments now. We think that that, in a combination with the inclusion of LNG for this winter, as well as the move that's been made within ISO New England to try to better account for the existing energy efficiency and some of the distributed generation resources, should help us to have lower prices this very winter. One other thing that's happening is that even though the New England governors have stepped back from pushing this pipeline through, the state of Maine is still intent on trying to use ratepayer money to get a pipeline built. So the Maine Public Utilities Commission staff was charged with writing a report that explained all of the testimony that had been put before them on the potential for investing ratepayer money into a new pipeline and whether or not that would be a cost-effective measure for the ratepayers. The staffers, who had sat through every bit of testimony and read every single piece of paper, concluded that a contract with a pipeline was not likely to be cost-effective. But the head of the Maine Public Utilities Commission, Tom Welsh, who happened to be one of the architects of the proposal for the tariff, along with former Undersecretary of Energy, Bobby Cates Garnett. Tom Welsh said, I want you to take that language out of the final decision. I don't want that language in there that it might not be cost effective. And we're going to proceed with looking at two proposals that we have to invest Maine ratepayer money into a pipeline project. And those two proposals are one, the Kinder Morgan Tennessee Gas Pipeline proposal, and two, a new proposal that's been put on the table by Spectra. So that proceeding is still moving forward, and CLF is involved and has been heavily involved in that proceeding and will continue to be involved. And you can bet that one of the first phone calls that Governor LePage made after the elections was to Governor Baker to try to get him to get back on board with the tariff proposal. So when this tariff proposal first came up, there was an idea that they were proposing that there was maybe 600 million cubic feet a day of natural gas that was needed to supply the region. I just wanted to show you, this is only a portion of the current pipeline proposals that are in play for New England. So 600 million cubic feet a day is what the governors were proposing. This totals more than 4.5 billion cubic feet a day. There's the Spectra Algonquin Incremental Market Project, which would bring in 342,000 million cubic feet a day. And according to Spectra, they're hoping to get that online by November 2016. There's the Constitution Pipeline, and that's 650 million cubic feet a day. It actually ends in Wright, New York, but its goal is to bring gas into New England, and that's projected to come online in November of 2015 or 2016. There's the Atlantic Bridge Project, which is another Spectra proposal. That could be anywhere from 100 to 600 million cubic feet a day, and that's projected for November 2017. There's the Northeast Direct, which is the TGP project, which is somewhere between 600 and 2 billion cubic feet a day, so there's a lot of room in between there, and they're projecting still that they would be able to get that online by November 2018. And then finally, there's the new proposal from Spectra, the Access Northeast, which could range anywhere from 200 million cubic feet a day to 1 billion cubic feet a day, projected to be in service by November 2018. Now, 4.5 billion cubic feet a day of new natural gas coming into our region makes no sense when you think about it in terms of what our stated climate goals are, and what our stated environmental goals are, and what our laws are. We have the Global Warming Solutions Act here in Massachusetts. And we just filed suit in August, Conservation Law Foundation, along with Mass Energy Consumers Alliance and 4 young kids who were concerned about the climate. Because the Global Warming Solutions Act not only required that we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to 25% below 1990 levels by 2020, and at least 80% below 1990 levels by 2050, but it also mandated the Department of Environmental Protection to put in place regulations that establish declining limits year by year. And they were supposed to do that by January 1st of 2012 to go into effect by January 1st of 2013. Anybody have a guess of whether or not they've done that? You know, this administration has done some amazing things in terms of signing the Global Warming Solutions Act into law, signing the Green Communities Act and the Green Jobs Act into law, and really has created a renewable energy revolution. But unless those regulations are put into place, and projects like new natural gas power plants and new proposed pipelines have to show that they can be consistent with those regulations, all the good work that has been done could be swamped by the flood of natural gas that is proposed to come into this region. And so that's one of the reasons that we went ahead and filed this lawsuit, even towards the end of an administration. And so that's something that we're continuing to work on to try to get the administration to take that next step and put those regulations in place so that all of these gas projects that are impacting Massachusetts would have to comply with those regulations. So what we're really talking about here is a battle over the vision of New England's energy future. And the question is whether or not we're going to go with the vision that this whole auditorium has laid out and that most of New England is on board with, and that is a clean energy future, or whether we're going to just live with more of the same. There's a number out there, it's 8,300 megawatts. I went ahead and put it all the way up to 9,000 megawatts because Vermont Yankee is also going to be retiring in the next few years. And so a lot of people have been saying, in the wake of the debunking of the winter price spikes as the justification for these new pipelines, a lot of people have been saying, but we're going to lose 8,300 megawatts from the system. We have to have more natural gas or we're not going to be able to keep the lights on. Well, that's not true. It's simply not true. One of the things that we did was we took a look at that 8,892 megawatts that is projected to potentially retire between now and 2020. And we said, how much have those plants actually been operating over the past 4 years? And if you look, and I'll talk loud now that I'm away from the microphone, the used capacity from those units for 2010 was only 2,114 megawatts, and after that, it was less than 1,500 megawatts. So that's, we're looking at about 1,728 megawatts of actual energy capacity that's being used among that 8,892 megawatts that's slated to retire. Now, you need to know that whenever we retire capacity from the system, that capacity has to be replaced to the level of what's known as the installed capacity requirement. So, if 8,892 megawatts retires, even though it's only been operating at less than 2,000 megawatts capacity, ISO New England is going to want to replace all of that capacity. What we know is that ISO New England hasn't been fully accounting for other existing capacity that's on the system. There's about 800 to 900 megawatts of capacity from distributed generation and energy efficiency that could also make up some of that 8,000 megawatts. And then there's something called the interconnection queue. This is a list of projects that have been proposed for New England. And this really shows you what the potential for the future of New England's energy is. Right now, if you look at what's in that interconnection queue, you'll see that there's about 3,600 megawatts of wind that is currently proposed. The total amount of natural gas that's proposed in that queue right now is almost 6,000 megawatts. If you're okay with bringing on an additional 6,000 megawatts of natural gas and all the air emissions and all the CO2 emissions and methane emissions that brings with it, then that vision of the future of New England probably does require some new pipelines. But what I want to tell you is that that future is not inevitable. Right now, Representative Haddad, who's the Speaker Pro Tem in the House here in Massachusetts, is drafting comprehensive energy legislation. And one of the things that happened last year at the end of the legislative session is there was this continued push to try to get these pipeline proposals through, was that the administration put forward something called the Clean Energy Resources Bill. Well, their version of clean energy included a lot of imported hydropower from Canada, and it also included that 2 billion cubic feet a day of natural gas from Kinder Morgan's proposed pipeline. We didn't agree with that. And a lot of other people didn't either, because they saw that if you flood the market with natural gas and with other types of resources, you kill the market and the growth opportunity for our economy to invest in local generation resources like offshore wind, like onshore wind, like solar, and like more energy efficiency. So when we talk about next steps, one of the big next steps for you is to continue to have your voice heard, to take part in the drafting and the debates over this comprehensive energy bill that's going to be proposed on the House side, as well as any energy proposals that are made on the Senate side, so that instead of seeing more of the same, more of an old, centralized, fossil fuel-based power grid, you get to see what a modern energy grid that relies on wind, solar, energy storage, distributed generation, renewable thermal options actually looks like. And that's not going to be an easy task, because the people who are pushing this know that this winter's prices will likely not be as bad as last winter's were. And as one of the legislators said, this is a campaign. It's not solely a campaign about pipelines. It's a campaign about the future of our energy system. And there are a lot of powerful people involved. And we've already seen the resources that those people have. We're going to have to work really carefully together to make sure that everyone uses the resources that they have in the best way that they can and coordinates so that we can build the energy future that we want to see. Not the energy future that ISO New England and a lot of the regulators think is inevitable, but the one that is possible and the one that is necessary. So thank you so much.